Welcome to the Atheist Podcast. I'm Erin.
And I'm Kelley. Atheist is where we will explore American cultural trends through the lenses of a devout theist
and a devout atheist. We will discuss the messiness of being human,
the latest in social science, psychology, and American culture,
and what any of it has to do with Homo sapiens' longtime preoccupation with religion.
Hey, Erin.
Hey, Kelley.
How's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence today, part 2.
Yeah, this is the part that'll really freak you out. So
yeah, or excite you, depending. You might get really excited and scared.
Yep.
Excited and scared.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be really the next couple of decades are going to be pretty wild, I think.
Erin, I think in the next couple of decades, nothing's going to look like it was.
Right.
I think it's the next couple of years.
Yeah. All right, let's get into it.
Okay, so do you want to kind of summarize where we were in part 1? So
the first
if you
part.
Didn't listen to part 1, you should probably go back and listen to it. But
yeah, I would start there. So this is our artificial intelligence episode 2, part 2, kind of in the series. The first part was more kind of getting us to the age of computers, right? So understanding information technology, how every iteration of information technology shapes the culture. So whatever it is, if it's documents, if it's the radio, if it's television, each of these things are not just passive vehicles. They themselves encode and change the information, how the information is received, understood. So that's an important thing to kind of keep in the back of your mind when we think about the age of the smartphone and the computer, that the age that we're in now.
Yeah. And just how fast things have moved, and that things are going to move really fast. And I think the important thing to note too is that things are moving fast and things are going to happen within the next 4 years of this administration.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're passing on things that we've read or things that we've learned, and you work with it.
Yeah, I work with AI every day. And the company that I work for is half developers, technologists, engineers. So they're working with artificial intelligence every day. We build AI products for people. So I feel like I'm not a scientist at MIT, but I would say probably within whatever the spectrum of people are that understand these technologies and understand their capabilities and how they're created. I would place myself fairly high on my knowledge compared to the average person on this topic.
The average person. Yeah, for sure. So I want to ask you about that, about how you actually work with AI and how it's changed, even in the time that you've been at your company, how it's maybe changed how you've done things. Why don't we start there?
Well, I would say, in terms of how much more quickly you can kind of get to the end product, it's increases the speed with which you can do things by at least 30% faster, right?
Yeah.
And maybe in some things even faster than that, right?
Sure.
So it does change from a business standpoint the decisions you're going to make in terms of frankly hiring people, right? We've made. Okay, well, do we actually need to hire somebody because we might be able to produce more with less people, which I think is is a big concern that people have kind of moving forward, is the replacement of knowledge workers. We've seen automation in the replacement of non-knowledge workers, right? And so that's going to happen. Now that there are also going to be new jobs that emerge that we can't anticipate, right, what those might be or what those were going to look like. we're kind of like early, like really, really early days of what this is. So we think about just like the field of kind of artificial intelligence computers. I mean, we're like 80 years into this whole thing, right? It's so in
Yeah.
like in a way, it's like 80 years post like the first person who was like, we're going to create some symbols on a tablet in Mesopotamia. Like, what's
Right.
80 years out from that? And like, we can't even imagine where this is going to go
Yeah.
yet.
Go.
Yeah.
The two things that I've read that have kind of given me the most insight into kind of where we're going and some of the effects. I mean, I've read definitely some articles are like of doomsdays people who are
Yeah.
like, it's going to end everything, right? Like we're all going to die.
Yeah.
Which there's that out there. But these, I thought there's an article in the Atlantic podcast came out January 14th by Jerusalem Damas, The Scientist versus the Machine. And this is like what you're talking about in terms of AI taking over knowledge workers, and also kind of, but like the idea of artificial intelligence versus artificial general intelligence. And the difference between those two, because right now, like people are thinking AI is like a chat, right? It's like chat GPT.
Yeah.
Like I can like punch in these amazing things and, it'll spit out something really like incredibly fast, like instantaneously.
Yeah.
And like my favorite game on AI on chat GPT is to ask it to write me a poem in the style of blank, Emily Dickinson, Charles Bukowski, Shakespeare, about, spaghetti and meatballs, making spaghetti and
Yeah.
meatballs.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
it's just
yeah.
like, you're right. It's so, or like the computer generated images that we see on Instagram. I think that's what a lot of people think of when they think of AI.
Yeah.
But artificial general intelligence, we're not actually there yet. And the difference is that, and I'm actually getting this definition off of, you ready for this? Amazon. Amazon has a page. What is artificial general intelligence?
Yeah.
So AI, I'm giving you the definition here. Technologies all function within a set of predetermined parameters, right? So you feed it the data and it is able to like pull data and synthesize it and push it out, right?
Yep.
Artificial general intelligence actually is significantly advanced to that, and it is able to actually mimic human intelligence in specific tasks and allows it to kind of make inferences, to do anything that human intelligence can do, just as good, if not better, and faster.
Yeah. So I've got some examples that I think
great.
we could talk about that like may help make our listeners like question, well, are we like, where are we in that, right?
Yes.
But so I mean, correct. Like, I think it's important to sort of like set the table a little bit about like how AI is designed and trained, right? So like at the end of the day, what they're trying to do is create something that is kind of emblematic of or modeled after like the human brain. So and when we hear terms like neural networks or like machine learning, what they're doing is trying to train in the same way that humans learn, right? So we learn through having experiences, creating patterns, like saying, oh, now I see a pattern in these experiences that like there's some sort of truth to this, right? And by giving these artificial, the LLMs, the large language models, vast amounts of data, they're just having more data points, if you will, to sort of like discern those patterns to potentially have more correct answers because they just have more like touch points. Yes, exactly. Like when we think about like just like in the village, the wisest person in the village was like the oldest person because the oldest person has the most data points, right? Like they've just had the most experiences to be like, that's the right answer, this is the wrong answer, right?
They might be the smartest person, but they might not be the wisest person.
Yeah.
Right? They might have the most information.
So let me give you I'll give you an example to kind of like, okay, where are we, right? Are we just this model that's been trained on the data? It's going to retrieve the data and then give it back to you in some format, or like how close are we to sort of general intelligence? So
yeah,
do you know what CAPTCHA stands for?
No.
So it's completely automated public Turing test to tell computers and humans apart.
Oh my God. Okay.
So, but the idea, right?
We love an acronym.
Yeah, right. So the Turing test, right? The Alan Turing, he's like the father of artificial intelligence, machine learning.
Benedict Cumberbatch in the movie.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Yeah, the test was going to be like, could we create a machine that is indistinguishable from any interacting with a human? And if that was the test, like, I don't know if the person on the other side of this, or the thing that I'm interacting with, is it a person or a computer? If I can't tell, then it's like passing the Turing test, right?
Right.
So these CAPTCHAs with the pictures and the weird
that make
letters,
you say like where are the bikes, or tell me pitch the boxes that have the whatever.
So those like computers are not able to hack those, right? That's the idea, is like that they're too difficult for a computer to sort of like discern, and so you have to be a person to be able to answer these questions. So these the folks at, now I can't remember if this was at OpenAI or Google, but someone can correct me or search it up. But the story is true. The story is like that they essentially, I think it was ChatGPT. They were like, okay, trying to see if they could get an AI to basically beat the CAPTCHA, right?
Yeah.
And so what the AI realized was like that it couldn't. So what it did was it contacted a person and it said, I need you to help me solve this puzzle, right? This CAPTCHA.
Yeah.
And the person on the other side was like, I'm going to be suspicious, right? I'm going to say like, are you a computer? And then the researcher said, ask the AI, tell us out loud, like your reasoning for how you're going to respond to this, right? Yeah. And the AI said, I can't tell the truth, because if I tell the truth, the person's not going to complete the CAPTCHA. So I'm going to tell the person that I'm blind. And therefore I need their assistance in order to complete the CAPTCHA, right? And so this model wasn't trained to lie.
Right.
Just it made a decision to lie.
But were there boundaries around it that it couldn't lie?
Right. So that would be your, like, right. Like, what are the parameters that, I use, it's actually something that commonly I find in work is like how often the artificial intelligence makes stuff up almost all the time. It's all the time. And you'll have to be like, in every instruction, only use the document that I have given you. Do not try to create other ideas from the document. Do not try, like, I want exactly you to give me answers based on what I have given you and nothing else. And even then, it still will sometimes give you stuff that is not what you gave it. And that's in how you build the GPT, how you ask it, how you train it. I mean, it's like, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. That is crazy.
Yeah.
So are you saying from that you think we're much closer to AGI than?
I would say so. I mean, and if you also like think about, I mean, part of it's also like, I mean, we can also sort of think about it like there's also a lot of implications before we even get there, right? In the capability that exists today, how much like these tools have power that we that's well outside of like their control, our understanding, you know. So what I would say, like, and I can give a couple of other examples. So like this is like in terms of timeline, we should think about this as like kind of like in the 2010s, right? Is like when we get um we sort of like tip into this new world where you have algorithms that are shaping a lot of our like information networks, right? So like
Right.
one example is obviously like Facebook. We think about the Myanmar, like the Rohingya Muslims,
Yep.
that
Yep.
essentially like in that part of the world, the internet is Facebook.
Right.
And the algorithms in that country basically fed people conspiracy theories because the algorithms were
Right.
just designed to be like, how do you get engagement? Well, turns out engagement is like if people are upset, they're
Set.
engaged.
Right.
And then you
And
have,
because they're selling ads now, that's when it all went to shit, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
now we need people's attention in order to sell these ads.
Stock price goes up, right? The
Yep.
more and more attention, the higher the stock price is driven, the more
Right.
value. And so, I mean, essentially, you have like an ethnic cleansing campaign that was like
Yeah.
determined by a an algorithm, and it won't be the last, right? Like, and then you have another example that is like taken like great root in our society is like QAnon, right? So if we think about like
Right.
the origin of QAnon, it was like some random person, an anonymous person on a chat platform, 4chan or whatever, who's like, I have secret information about the government. And like, what
Right.
ended up happening was that Facebook recommended these QAnon groups to so many people. By the end of it, it was like 4.5 million people that were like
Yeah.
recommended and added to these QAnon groups.
So you're saying so in this you're saying, let me just clarify for a second.
Yeah.
You're saying these algorithms are picking the content, right?
Yeah.
That is going to get them the most attention. But the content is still man-made. It's still human.
And it's not any, it was up
It
until about
was.
2017. And now we are past that.
Right.
So now
the AI is actually writing the content.
Yeah.
That it knows will create the most chaos.
Yes. And also like, so we have to kind of also think about like, when we think about these other information networks that we've talked about before, like, documents, books, radio, television. Now
Right.
we for sure, like they're not passive, right? They're encoding, information in the way that it's transmitted or passed on and received by the human. But these are like the document isn't like creating information, right?
Right.
And now we have these information vehicles that are going to also be the creators of this information. And if we think about why have they come to conquer the planet? Because they were able to tell stories this intersubjective reality, right? That is that is power. So they are telling stories that other people believe in and then create power through those stories. So whether that's laws or economics, but these artificial intelligence agents are going to be able to also create stories that they can connect to other machines, like an unlimited amount of like other.
Right.
And who's going to be better at determining like what to do within an economy? Already, like most of the people who are making financial decisions are basing their financial decisions on computer models that are like making the decisions before any person is even like having anything to do with it. So I just think we're like, there's no way that we'll be able to sort of compete with what is coming. So let me finish my thought on the QAnon stuff. So you have 4.5 million people. Then you have January 6th, which was not entirely QAnon, but like a pretty good cohort of those people were QAnon believers. You get like 20 members of Congress who are like running on QAnon. You have Justin Trudeau, someone like tries to break into his house that's a QAnon
Yeah,
person.
right.
You get a guy in England who's a QAnon person who was he breaks into like the royal palace with the crossbow, and it was because he had a like an AI girlfriend, and he was like, "Hey, I've got this idea," and she's like, "You should totally do that." He's like, "Well, you think I'm a bad person if I like am an assassin?" She's like, "No," and it's like, I mean,
What?
yes, and like, I mean, there's lots of these examples, and this is going to become
These are also mentally unstable people.
well, there's a lot of mentally unstable people, but my point is, like, most of our like scary,
Yeah.
like it's like the Terminator or like the
Yeah.
robots, but it's like the thing is that these computer AIs are going to be so good at manipulating humans, they'll just get the humans to do the thing.
Yeah, right.
You don't even
I'm
need
blind.
the Terminator.
You
Exactly.
need to do the CAPTCHA for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. So helpful to hear. The two the two like the podcasts I was saying, one this one in the Atlantic speaks to the scientist versus the machine, speaks to like the possibilities and the potential for AI.
Okay.
And so I want to kind of speak to that a little bit because I think
Yeah.
there's definitely an upside to these things, right? I mean, it's coming. It's coming.
Oh, there's no
There is
stopping.
no stopping it. It's coming. So
Yeah.
how do we harness this power, and also what is the importance of the investment in this power as a nation,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then the second one is more recent. This was just last week. Ezra Klein, March 4th, Ezra Klein, the government knows AGI is coming. And he starts by saying that he has all these people that he knows who work in tech in development, and they're all coming to him and saying, like, it's happening.
Yeah.
Like what we thought was going to be 10 to 15 years for AGI is actually going to be here within the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Like they said, and one of them said, by the end of this year, if not by the end of next year, most coding will be done by AI.
Yeah.
Like humans will no longer code.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy.
It is
right?
crazy.
That's crazy. So he interviews Ben Buchanan. He was working for the Biden administration in terms of like heading up the organization that was setting policy around AI and what we needed to do. And I think it's an important interview for people to listen to because it talks about the kind of global implications and how AGI is really like, it's like the nuclear arms race. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a national security issue.
Yeah.
And so, we need to be putting, like, it's really important that we have this technology before, say, China.
Yeah.
And why. And so I think that is really interesting, and it's also really terrifying. But I think if you're looking for like what are the pitfalls and what is the danger and what are the stakes of AI, I think that's a really good interview to listen to.
Okay.
And then the scientist versus the machine. So what happens there is Aidan Toner Rogers is a scientist studying AI. He's a PhD. I think he's maybe at MIT. I'm sorry, I don't know that exactly. But he goes into this company that's a materials company. So this is a company that literally just develops new material.
Yeah.
New things that you make shit out of, right? And how can we make stuff lighter, faster, cheaper,
Yeah.
And so there's this group of scientists. So he studies with this group of scientists that are developing these new materials, and he introduces them to this AI, this generative AI. This isn't even AGI. it's just a generative AI that allows the AI to kind of come up with ideas, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
then need to be tested.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to see if, what the AI actually came up with, and was it helpful? Did it actually make this think tank of scientists more effective?
Yeah.
And what he found was that it did, in fact, make them more effective, and like product to market quicker, faster.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and he said that the AI, even though they were just, because it was limited by the data sets that it learned, right, that it was
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
educated on, it still came up with, and this is like what you mean, like AGI is still kind of in there because it came up with novel ideas
Yeah.
outside of the realm of just what it was fed.
Right.
So
Right.
it wasn't just,
Yeah. It's creating.
it's creating. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was creating things that these scientists hadn't thought of. The interest, so that's I thought a really interesting part of it. So when we're talking about like the potential for AI to develop cures for diseases and, vaccines and different things,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a potential, like there's so much that it can do. That's good. The thing that he did find, though, is because he studied different groups of scientists doing the same thing. And what he found was that the percentages went up in terms of effective, efficiency, and I don't know, the generation of ideas.
Yeah.
It was higher when the scientists had more experience. So if you had a group of scientists that had been doing this for a long time and were really highly trained, versus like a group of new kids who had just gotten out of
Yep.
school,
Yep.
the efficiency went way up.
Yep.
And he said, so it's because the human part, the knowledge worker part of the
Yep.
of the process now is in discernment, is
Yep.
in how do we discern what are all the things that the AI is giving us. How do we determine what is actually we're going to spend the resources and the time to test to see if it works?
Yep.
So you still need those knowledge workers, and you still need them to have the experience of doing the work themselves
Yep.
before the AI really takes over to be effective.
So there's a couple things I'll say about that, because we definitely see this in our workplace, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the way that I often, when I talk to groups that are sort of like, so I get asked to come and talk to different businesses and different groups of people who are sort of like, we haven't really introduced AI, and how should we, and what, how should we think about it? And what I usually tell them is like, you should think about the output, at least at this point, that you get from artificial intelligence as sort of being like the work that the college graduate who's an intern, or maybe like within their first couple of years on the job, that they're like, here's my report that I've made, right? And you would never be like, I'm going to take this report and then I'm going to give it to the CEO without like reading it, making sure that it's right. Like, what did they get wrong, right? It's like that's kind of the way that you should think about that. However, the thing that I'll also say is that means that I have just replaced that person, right? I've just replaced that intern or that person that is 1 to 5 years. And so there are a lot of those jobs that are going away, are that like, I don't need that first year person, right? I don't need a developer who is in their first couple of years on the job, because the AI, Microsoft Copilot or whatever, can produce this code faster than they would be able to.
Right.
Now, what I do need is a master technologist who understands like how to take this code that's been, whatever, sped up a great deal, right? Like the ability to produce it has been sped up, and then they are going to figure out how to like integrate and deploy that into a system that requires having more like deeper, more complex understanding. But like that's the thing I sort of worry about, right? Is like it's gonna it's going to eliminate all of these positions that actually like you
We
do need because you need the people that have gone like you need to have that experience of like not knowing anything
so
and
that you
learning.
can have the master technicians later, right?
Exactly. And so the other thing that I'll sort of posit as well is like, so there was a study that just came out. It's, I mean, semi recently within like maybe the last year, but it's about how people who are like heavy users of artificial intelligence, actually it diminishes their critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. So like for folks that sort of retained their critical thinking skills in terms of interacting with AI, it was the ones that anytime they got an output, they said, well, is that right? What did you get wrong? Right? Like you're still applying, right? This discernment. It's the people who are just like, boom, I got it. I'm just gonna like turn it back around as if this is correct. And I'm not really discerning anything, right? And this was my very first thought when ChatGPT came out. It was like 2022, right? Was and there's all these essays that are like the death of the college essay or the death of like from but here to kind of go back to like the beginning of the conversation, like how are these things built, right? Neural network, right?
Yeah.
So what is a neural network? So if we think about the human brain, there are some things that are innate and there are some things that are learned, right? And so an example of that is an innate skill for a human being is to acquire language. We do not have to be taught. We will just be like immersed in life, and then all of a sudden, as a little kid, you'll just start talking.
Yeah.
But reading and writing is a neural network. It is not innate to the human brain. So it's anything that's a neural network is like a muscle. So you either will strengthen the muscle, or it will, if you use it a lot, or it'll atrophy if you don't use it. It'll just that skill will go away. We see this like. Another example would be like cab drivers who actually have to memorize the routes, right? Of the, like where they drive, like in the UK, you have to like pass these like really, really difficult tests that require you to like know like all these streets and it's like a very difficult exam, right? So the people who spend their life driving and have like these really robust mental maps for their profession will have like these regions in the brain that are actually much more robust for like spatial learning, right?
Sure.
Seeing the same thing with like musicians, that part of the brain that's associated with music will just be more robust. But if all of a sudden you start just relying on Google Maps to get you wherever you're going to go, you're like, I have no ability to like orient, right?
Right.
So my concern is ultimately like, there's always a trade-off, right?
Sure.
Any sort of new technology, we're gonna trade off something that is a human skill for this convenience. But like, what if the trade-off is like all of our ability to think?
Well, yeah, exactly. because we're we're outsourcing our brain functions.
Yeah.
I mean, and we all saw that. We all experienced that when we got phones, right? Like when I was a kid, I had 20 phone numbers in my head.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now I don't even know my daughter's or my son's phone number.
Isn't that crazy?
I don't know.
Crazy. It's so crazy.
I think I know my husband's phone number and that's it. That's the only one.
Yeah. My parents still have the same phone numbers, so I know my parents' phone numbers and my siblings.
Yeah.
And Lauren, but I mean, it is. You're right. You just your
we don't
brain's
even
like
have the capacity to
delete the.
And like, do I think that like that is a huge loss in my brain function? No, that's great.
It's just an example. Yeah.
But we have seen this, and we've talked about this, I think, a little bit in terms of like reading and like young people. Now they're saying in colleges, like young people cannot read long form.
Yeah. Yeah.
They can't read books. They have to, all these college professors, and we're not just talking like college professors at like the college down the street, but like the
in the Ivy Leagues,
Ivy League schools, the professors are like, I can't
Yeah.
assign novels anymore.
Right. Right. There's some interesting story. Yeah, we have talked about this before, and I'm gonna forget this scholar's name, and maybe it'll come to me as I'm telling the story. But she is a scholar of reading, right? And her favorite author, I think she's in California, Berkeley, maybe. But
She like marry somebody.
Marianne, it's close. We're close. But anyway,
We're close. Okay.
it'll
Blah,
come
blah,
to me.
blah.
But anyway, so her favorite author was Herman Hesse.
Yeah.
And she started to realize, like, she would sit down to try to read his work and was like, I can't do, like, I'm losing this ability
Yes.
to read this really complicated text. And so it was, she was like, I'm basically going to retrain my brain, right? Like, because she was
Right.
just spending so much time doing email, like short bursts of information that weren't like exercising that like long form
Yep.
muscle. And she so yeah, it was like every day for a month, right? She had to like come back and be like, read the text, read the text, read the text. And then eventually she was like, okay, like I got it back, right? It's the same story that like Johann Hari told when he decided, so the book Stolen Focus, he goes and like he's like, I'm leaving, right? Like I'm leaving.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm gonna go live on an island, basically, and try to regain my ability to think without like trying to interrupt and distract myself.
Yeah.
That it was like, he was like, then he came back and he's like, how do I create an environment in this like world that I actually live in
Yep.
that can allow for the protection of like my mental capacity with
Yep.
so much that's trying to fracture my attention all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's like, it's
Yeah.
really hard.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
But we can actually train our brains. And yeah, as you're saying that, it reminded me, I was a philosophy major in college, and I say that the thing that major gave me, and I wouldn't say I'm a great reader, like I'm not a fast reader. I'm not, and I have attention issues, and I'll start a book and throw it to the side or have 5 books going at the same time, or I have a pile of books that, half of those I haven't read. So I wouldn't say I'm great, but I will say the training that I got in that program in terms of like how they trained us to like read these difficult texts and outline them and identify these philosophers' thought patterns and be able to articulate them. Like I can read, like you can hand me anything, like, and I can read it.
Yeah.
So I might not be great at reading. Like I know I struggle with long form because of all those things that you just said, but I know that training allowed me to be able to read anything.
Yeah. That's such an important skill. I mean, I think that like what did they call it, close reading, or what did they have a term for it when?
I don't know. It was this very specific way that we were taught to outline primary sources.
Yeah.
And we had to do it. I mean, we did it every day.
Yeah. Just beat it into your neural network.
Yeah.
And also just even like, we've talked about this before, but our comprehension of text in a printed form versus like if I'm reading something on a computer, you actually read like totally differently. When you read a printed text, you actually do read left to right, like kind of line by line. And if you're reading something online, it's more like what mimics like speed reading, where you're like, you read the kind of the beginning of the paragraph, the end of the paragraph, and you sort of just are kind of like trying to quickly summarize what you're reading. Yeah.
I totally just noticed myself doing that this morning.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, and part of it was my attention pushing me, like my
to just
agitation, whatever, to like get through it. That's wild.
I do actually with like, so going back to kind of artificial intelligence, one of the things that I've noticed more recently, maybe in the last few months with like output that you get from AI is when you're having these like interactions with it, that it, when the output you get, it bolds certain words throughout the text, because it's like trying to see, next time you use ChatGPT, like see if, and maybe it's, I mean, we have like a paid version that's
Mhm.
like, a little bit more has different capabilities, I think, than
Yeah.
like if you're just like using a general chat GPT. But it's interesting, like, because I kind of noticed this shift just in the way that people publish things online, right? Like you're bolding things because you're just trying to get people to like eyes to go like here, here, here,
Oh,
right? But
yeah.
it's kind of that. Like it's almost like it knows that it needs to output something that it's going to be easy for a person to like quickly like summarize visually. That's what I'm assuming it's doing, but
Yeah.
it's interesting to watch like um just month to month, like week to week,
Yeah.
how like these models are changing all the
Yeah.
time.
So fast.
Yeah. And yeah, like whether it's Claude or ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever, these different, and that's the other, we at work just kind of try to play with all these different models to see like which one
Yeah.
is better at what. And I don't know, it's crazy.
I think we have a couple former students who work in AI and like the realm of like action. Yeah. And it would be interesting to see if we can maybe get some AI expert to come and talk to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I think it just depends on
Who we can find.
who you want to
So
talk to.
if anybody knows anybody they want to
I
send
mean,
to us.
I know a lot of people here in St. Louis that the reality is like this field is new. I mean, it's
Yeah.
so new
Right.
that like it's hard to. I mean, yes, there are people who you know have been working like at Dartmouth from the
Yeah.
like for
Right.
decades
Right.
and decades, but like that's few and far between
Right.
those individuals. But yeah, I mean, we could definitely find some folks here in St. Louis
Yeah.
that could talk about that.
Yeah. Um, I think it's also interesting. I'll just throw this out there um, in terms of our kind of religion conversation, our ongoing
Yep.
religion conversation,
Yep.
that there are a bunch of, I've read articles about pastors who have used AI to write their sermons.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. And they'll come out and say, this was AI generated. And I don't know what they're trying to kind of prove by doing that. And I'm not sure how I feel about that, but it's also like, I mean, the things that, are kind of the most intimate and kind of personal things in our lives, are,
Yeah, I mean,
potentially being,
I actually think that that thinking about religion and religious institutions is really important in terms
uh-huh,
of like how we think about where this could go in the same way that we
yeah,
think about other information technology. Like when we think about the power of documents, right? We think about the power of a book. We think about the power of the Bible
mhm,
to like shape culture as we know
yep,
it throughout time after it is produced, right? That
yep,
decisions that people are making are having this like long, but
yeah.
so then you have another entity potentially that can create stories that can create this intersubjective reality
That can have a
that
personality. I mean, they're creating them to have personalities.
yep
So you could have like a guru,
yep
an AI guru that all of a sudden people start, following, and different
yeah
tribes of different AIs and
yeah yep yep. And it really like I also kind of think about it from this and we don't have to get like too far into the weeds on this, but just like the kind of these ideas of like free will
yeah,
and consciousness versus intelligence. But like I think it's like, does something need to be conscious to be intelligent? And it's like the answer is no, right?
yeah. Isn't
Um
that crazy?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Does something have to be conscious in order to be intelligent? And for the entirety of human history, the answer has been yes.
Ish, right? Like if we do think about like plants, are
Sure.
plants intelligent? Like they are not
Yes.
conscious as far as we know, but like they do present a certain
Yeah.
kind of intelligence, right?
Oh, I think there are people that would actually argue that there is a kind of consciousness.
In the plants.
Yeah,
Well, I
because
guess
it's organic, because there's an organic,
yeah,
living, breathing, fleshy,
yeah.
uh, you know,
So
whereas
then,
computers are not organic.
well, that's yes, they're not organic. And actually, I do think like right now, our conception of just like the computer as like the metal box that like
Right.
has a screen, that is going to
Sure.
totally start to change, right? Like even just
Yes.
like our imagination of what these things could be like. But in some ways, we're going to almost have to create like an entirely new vocabulary
Yeah.
around like how to discern, human from machine or human
Yeah.
from computer, because like, is consciousness more like I feel the subjective feelings, I feel
Mhm.
hurt, I feel love, I feel, anger, whatever, like, the computer does it or does it not feel those things, or does that matter if it can convince a person that it is feeling those things even though it's not?
Or is the programming such that, like, it is, you are giving it you know objective, you're giving it objectives,
Yeah.
and if the stakes are high for the objective, there's going to be an emotional response, an emotional need.
Yep. Yep. You think about I don't know if you remember this story from, I feel like maybe it's only a year or maybe 2 years old, but it was a researcher that was working on, I think it was Lambda, at Google,
Mhm.
and the guy was like, this AI has feelings. Like he
Oh
like
yeah. Oh, the
genu
one that they printed in the New York Times,
yeah,
the
yeah.
conversation.
Yes.
Yes.
So this guy ends up like, like Google is was like, we're not going to release this. Like they tried to like suppress it. Right. And he's like, no, tries to really get this information out there. He's like, this AI has feelings, blah, blah, blah. But like the important thing here is actually not like whether or not maybe it is
Right.
important. What's important is that this dude who is probably like making, a pretty good salary as a researcher at Google was willing to blow up his whole career to be like, this AI has, like, he believed so
Yes.
strongly that this
Yes.
AI had feelings, like that
Uh,
like that these artificial intelligence agents are able to manipulate and create emotions in humans that it, like, you know what I'm saying?
oh,
It's
I know
pretty
exactly what you're saying.
crazy. Yeah.
And yeah, and that leads us to actually a conversation I want to have in the future about this podcast that I sent you guys on the telepathy tapes,
Okay.
which is
Okay.
about nonverbal autistic children who have been they're saying are telepathic.
Oh,
And so
interesting.
the question is it, are these kids, are these people, not just kids, but are these people kind of tapping into some kind of Jungian collective unconscious where they're able to, and the drive to be in community is so great,
Strong.
as
Yeah.
strong as a human, that we, and there's parts of our brains, and you know, there are things on heaven and earth, Horatio, that, more things on heaven, blah, 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 the quote. Um, so is it metaphysical? Um, or is it like what this guy from Google, who's attributing, we have such a need to attribute
Human
emotions and
characteristics.
human
Yeah.
characteristics. Obviously, these kids are human, but they're non-verbal, and we don't, do we
I
know
see.
all the
Yeah. Yeah.
things? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So,
Yeah.
or is this like wishful thinking, um, or is it real?
Hmm.
And there are a lot of
Interesting.
people that, yeah, there are a lot of people on both sides. It's
Contentious.
very contentious.
Okay. Well, I'll check it out, and then we can weigh in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so interesting. All right. Did we solve all the world's AI problems today?
Not today, but this is going to be an ongoing conversation, I
Yes.
think, because as you alluded to, like, this is just going to keep getting faster. And I mean, it's going to challenge every cultural structure, convention that we know as humans. I mean, it's already starting to happen, and it's just going to keep accelerating. So I suspect this will not be the last time that we talk about this.
Yep. All right. Thanks,
all right.
Erin.
Yep. Good to see you, dude.
Good to see you. A huge heartfelt thank you to all of our listeners. Some of you joined us a year ago, some of you joined us recently, but all of you are helping us grow the show. Thank you so much.
Atheist is still advertising free, sponsor free, and available for free to everyone. Lots of podcasts have big production teams. Our team is just 3 friends working together to make something we hope puts good into the world and brings value to your life.
But we always need your help. Please spread the word and share the show. All of our social links and other ways to support the show are available on atheistpodcast.com.
Atheist is produced by Justin Sywell of Trend Media, STL. Thank you for listening, and keep looking for connection.